The Patient Cartographer. Alex learned early that the world arrives not only with opportunities, but with persuaders soft, persistent, and often camouflaged as progress. In the glass towers of the city where he lived, the skyline reflected not only sunlight, but 1,000 invitations, promotions that promised prestige, apps that promised efficiency, partnerships that promised capital. Each invitation glittered with a plausible justification. A whisper of, "Why not?" that seemed sensible until you listened closely enough to hear its cost. One autumn morning, Alex rode the tram and watched the city unspool like a film of decisions. A headline flashed on a commuter screen, "Scale or Fade." His inbox chimed with a venture pitch that promised immediate traction if he compromised a principle he'd rehearsed for years. Somewhere between the cafe that sold almond milk and the consultancy that sold certainty, he felt the familiar tug, the seductive clarity of a shortcut. His friend Lena texted, "They want you to sign today." It solves a lot. The message radiated urgency. Alex could feel his palms tighten. The temptation was not exotic. It was banal and quotidian, wrapped in spreadsheets and timelines. Yet it carried the same moral density as any ancient temptation, quick gain in exchange for relinquishment of some internal compass. He closed his laptop. He walked to a park bench and let the noise of the city become an external rhythm rather than an internal command. The practice he had cultivated, an unostentatious discipline of attention, came into play. He labeled the sensation as precisely as a scientist labels variables: attraction, rationalization, anticipated relief, latent guilt. The ability to name these phenomena made them less mysterious and less powerful. Discernment, he reminded himself, was not an instantaneous flash of righteousness born from arrogance. It was the slow accretion of clarity, reading the small print of one's impulse, tracing the consequences of a decision 3 or 5 years forward, and listening for the persistent voice that had previously guided him through quieter dilemmas. There was a difference between knowing what felt good now and knowing what sustained meaning. He had learned to privilege the latter. He thought of his grandmother, who kept a cabinet of plain jars: rice, lentils, tea, each precisely labeled. "Order gives freedom," she would say, unscrewing lids with a calm deliberateness. Her motto had always sounded paradoxical: structure as freedom. But now he understood the logic. Boundaries, ethical, temporal, personal, were not walls that constrained. They were frames that allowed patterns to emerge. With a frame, a painting became legible. Alex drafted a list. Not a manifesto, just a functional map. What were his non-negotiables? Creative integrity, the quiet of Sundays, time for his sister, a clause to refuse any partnership that required obfuscation. The act of putting these items into language solidified them in his mind. They became beacons rather than abstract ideals. He noticed how his breathing slowed when he read the list. The decision no longer resided in the heat of the moment, but in a conversation with a composed self. When he returned to the office, the pitch awaited like a patient animal. The numbers tempted. The timelines threatened to outpace reflection. He declined to sign. He proposed an alternative: slower growth, more transparency, staged commitments tied to verifiable milestones. The counterproposal was less glamorous and more durable. The team blinked. Some colleagues applauded. Others muttered about missed windows. In the immediate aftermath, there was a small loss of momentum. But in its place emerged a steadier cadence, a pace that matched his sense of direction. Over the following months, the choice proved instructive rather than conclusive. Some opportunities evaporated. Others arrived calibrated to the boundaries he'd kept. People who respected clarity stayed. Those who sought expediency drifted away. Alex's life did not transform into a didactic moral tale. He still experienced doubt and fatigue. He still looked at alluring emails and felt the old tug. But the habit of pausing, of mapping values to action, of distinguishing temptation from purpose, had become a muscle he could exercise. Philosophy, he realized, was not merely speculation about the good, but an applied technology for living. It gave him concepts prudence, autonomy, integrity that he translated into operational practices, routines, accountability partners, explicit contracts with himself. Modern life offered 1,000 mini temptations, notifications that promised novelty, opportunities that promised acceleration. The secret was not to vanquish all temptation, but to cultivate an internal architecture robust enough to let in what mattered and keep out what corroded. One evening, as he walked home beneath sodium lamps and the hum of distant traffic, Alex glanced at the skyline. The towers still glittered. The city still offered its siren songs. He felt neither smugness nor despair. The direction he had chosen was not an inflexible decree, but a living itinerary, subject to revision, enriched by experience, corrected by honest failure. He had learned to treat direction as a practice rather than a possession. A week later, Lena messaged again. Lena, this time reporting a deal that had proceeded without transparency and then faltered publicly. I wish we had insisted on your clauses, she wrote. Alex replied with a line that was half consolation and half instruction. Direction sometimes costs us momentum. More often, it preserves the margin we need to steer. He pressed send and kept walking. The city continued to hum with offers, with bright screens and easy compromises. But Alex had discovered something more practical than mere moralism, the ability to discern, swiftly and without drama, whether an external proposition aligned with the vector of his life. That clarity did not end dilemmas or quiet doubt entirely, but it made navigation possible. In a world that prized acceleration, he chose to be a patient cartographer of his own course, drawing the map as he moved, studying the compass when necessary. Vocabulary. Vocabulary. Discernment, the ability to perceive and judge things accurately, keen insight into the nature of situations. He exercised discernment when deciding which offers aligned with his long-term goals. Temptation, a strong desire to do something, especially something wrong or unwise. The temptation to accept immediate funding clouded the team's capacity for reflection. Prudence, careful good judgment that allows someone to avoid danger or risks, wise caution. Her prudence led her to negotiate clearer terms rather than accepting the agreement outright. Calibrate, to adjust or set something accurately to achieve a desired measurement or effect. They calibrated their strategy to ensure sustainable growth rather than explosive expansion. Non-negotiable, not open to change or discussion, fixed and uncompromisable. One of his non-negotiables was preserving time for creative thinking every week. Autonomy, independence, the freedom to govern oneself and make personal decisions. Maintaining autonomy required refusing terms that would cede control to external actors. Integrity, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. The company's reputation rested on a commitment to integrity in its disclosures. Beacon, a guiding or warning signal that provides direction or inspiration. Her values served as a beacon when choices became ambiguous. Cadence, a rhythmic sequence or flow of sounds or events. Here, the tempo of one's life or work. He preferred a measured cadence to frantic bursts of productivity. Accretion, the gradual accumulation of layers or items over time, often resulting in growth. Wisdom often arrives by accretion, small insights gathered across many experiences. Opaque, not transparent or difficult to understand, deliberately obscured. Opaque contracts should prompt extra scrutiny before any signature is affixed. Staged, as in staged commitments, arranged in progressive phases rather than all at once to manage risk. They structured the partnership as staged commitments tied to clear milestones. Margin, the leeway or buffer that allows for adjustments and recovery when plans go awry. Keeping a financial and temporal margin allowed them to pivot without panic. Cartographer, someone who draws maps, used metaphorically for a person who charts a course or plan. As a cartographer of his life, he regularly revised his map to reflect new realities. Vector, a direction or course along which something moves or develops. He asked whether each new opportunity aligned with the vector of his larger objectives.